Welcome to part 3 of our read aloud of Number the Stars. And when we last read at the end of part 2, Anne Marie was just finding out that the Nazis who have taken over Denmark are now starting to target Denmark's Jewish population for discrimination and mistreatment. And we'll pick up right from there and get right into our story. Alone in the apartment while Mama was out shopping with Kirsty, Anne Marie and Ellen were sprawled on the living room floor playing with paper dolls. They had cut the dolls from Mama's magazines. Old ones she had saved from past years. The paper ladies had old-fashioned hairstyles and clothes, and the girls had given them names from Mama's very favorite book. Mama had told Anne Marie and Ellen the entire story of Gone with the Wind, and the girls thought it much more interesting and romantic than the King and Queen tales that Kirsty loved. "Come, Melanie," Anne Marie said, walking her doll across the edge of the rug. "Let's dress for the ball." "All right, Scarlett, I'm coming," Ellen replied in a sophisticated voice. She was a talented performer. She often played the leading roles in school dramatics. Games of the imagination were always fun when Ellen played. The door opened, and Kirsty stomped in, her face tear-stained and glowering. Mama followed her with an exasperated look on her face and set a package down on the table. "I won't," Kirsty sputtered. "I won't ever wear them. Not if you chain me in a prison and beat me with sticks." Anne Marie giggled and looked questioningly at her mother. Mrs. Johansson sighed. "I bought Kirsty some new shoes. She's outgrown her old ones." "Goodness, Kirsty," Ellen said. "I wish my mother would get me some new shoes. I love new things, and it's so hard to find them in stores." "Not if you go to a fish store," Kirsty bellowed. "But most mothers wouldn't make their daughters wear ugly fish shoes." "Kirsten," Mama said soothingly, "you know it wasn't a fish store, and we were lucky to find shoes at all." Kirsty sniffed. "Show them," she commanded. "Show Anne Marie and Ellen how ugly they are." Mama opened the package and took out a pair of little girls' shoes. She held them up, and Kirsty looked away in disgust. "You know there's no leather anymore, but they found a way to make shoes out of fish skin. I don't think these are too ugly." Anne Marie and Ellen looked at the fish skin shoes. Anne Marie took one in her hand and examined it. It was odd looking, and the fish scales were visible. But it was a new shoe, and her sister needed new shoes. "It's not so bad, Kirsty," she said, lying a little. Ellen turned the other one over in her hand. "You know, it's only the color that's ugly." "Green!" Kirsty wailed. "I'll never ever wear ugly green fish shoes." "In our apartment," Ellen told her, "my father has a jar of black ink. Would you like these shoes better if they were black?" Kirsty frowned. "Maybe I would," she said finally. "Well then," Ellen told her, "tonight if your mama doesn't mind, I'll take the shoes home and ask my father to make them black for you with his ink." Mama laughed. "I think that would be a fine improvement. What do you think, Kirsty?" Kirsty pondered. "Could he make them shiny? I want them shiny." Ellen nodded. "I think he could. I think they'll be quite pretty black and shiny." Kirsty nodded. "All right then. But you mustn't tell anyone that they're fish. I don't want anyone to know." She took her new shoes, holding them disdainfully, and put them on a chair. Then she looked with interest at the paper dolls. "Can I play too?" Kirsty asked. "Can I have a doll?" She squatted beside Anne Marie and Ellen on the floor. Sometimes, Anne Marie thought, Kirsty was such a pest, always butting in. But the apartment was small, and there was really no other place for Kirsty to play. And if they told her to go away, Mama would scold them. "Here," Anne Marie said, handing her sister a cut-out little girl doll. "We're playing Gone with the Wind. Melanie and Scarlett are going to the ball, and you can be Bonnie. She's Scarlett's daughter." Kirsty danced her doll up and down happily. "I'm going to the ball," she announced in a pretend voice. Ellen giggled. "A little girl wouldn't go to a ball. Let's make them go someplace else. Let's make them go to Tivoli." "Tivoli?" Anne Marie began to laugh. "That's in Copenhagen. Gone with the Wind is in America." "Tivoli, Tivoli, Tivoli," little Kirsty sang, twirling her doll in a circle. "It doesn't matter, because it's only a game anyway," Ellen pointed out. "Tivoli can be over there by that chair. Come, Scarlett," she said using her doll voice. We shall go to Tivoli to dance and watch the fireworks, and maybe there will be some handsome men there. Bring your silly daughter Bonnie, and she can ride on the carousel." Anne-Marie grinned and walked her Scarlet toward the chair that Ellen had designated as Tivoli. She loved Tivoli Gardens in the heart of Copenhagen. Her parents had taken her there often when she was a little girl. She remembered the music and the brightly colored lights, the carousel, the ice cream, and especially the magnificent fireworks in the evenings, the huge colored splashes and bursts of light in the evening sky. "I remember the fireworks best of all," Anne-Marie commented to Ellen. "Me too," Kirsty said. "I remember the fireworks." "Silly," Anne-Marie scoffed. "You never saw the fireworks." Tivoli Gardens was closed now. The German occupation forces had burned part of it, perhaps as a way of punishing the fun-loving Danes for their light-hearted pleasures. Kirsty drew herself up, her small shoulders stiff. "I did too," she said belligerently. "It was my birthday. I woke up in the night and I could hear the booms, and there were lights in the sky, and Mama said it was fireworks for my birthday." Then Anne-Marie remembered. Kirsty's birthday was late in August, and that night, only a month before, she too had been awakened and frightened by the sound of explosions. Kirsty was right. The sky in the southeast had been ablaze, and Mama had comforted her by calling it a birthday celebration. "Imagine such fireworks for a little girl just 5 years old," Mama had said, sitting on their bed, holding the dark curtain aside to look through the window at the lit sky. The next evening's newspaper had told the sad truth. The Danes had destroyed their own naval fleet, blowing up the vessels one by one as the Germans approached to take over the ships for their own use. "How sad the king must be," Anne-Marie had heard Mama say to Papa when they read the news. "You mean how proud," Papa had replied. It had made Anne-Marie feel sad and proud, too, to picture the tall, aging king, perhaps with tears in his blue eyes, as he looked at the remains of his small navy, which now lay submerged and broken in the harbor. "I don't want to play anymore, Ellen," Anne-Marie said suddenly, and put her paper doll on the table. "I have to go home anyway," Ellen said. "I have to help Mama with the house cleaning. Thursday is our New Year, did you know that?" "Why is it yours?" asked Kirsty. "Isn't it our New Year too?" "No, it's the Jewish New Year. That's just for us. But if you want, Kirsty, you can come that night and watch Mama light the candles." Anne-Marie and Kirsty had often been invited to watch Mrs. Rosen light the Sabbath candles on Friday evenings. She covered her head with a cloth and said a special prayer in Hebrew as she did so. Anne-Marie always stood very still and quiet, awed to watch. Even Kirsty, usually such a chatterbox, was always still at that time. They didn't understand the words or the meaning, but they could feel what a special time it was for the Rosens. "Yes," Kirsty agreed happily. "I'll come and watch your Mama light the candles, and I'll wear my new black shoes." But this time was to be different. Leaving for school on Thursday with her sister, Anne-Marie saw the Rosens walking to the synagogue early in the morning, dressed in their best clothes. She waved to Ellen, who waved happily back. "Lucky Ellen," Anne-Marie said to Kirsty. "She doesn't have to go to school today." "But," Kirsty pointed out, "she probably has to sit very, very still like we do in church. And sitting still and quiet, that's no fun." That afternoon, Mrs. Rosen knocked at their door but didn't come inside. Instead, she spoke for a long time in a hurried, tense voice to Anne-Marie's mother in the hall. When Mama returned, her face was worried, but her voice was cheerful. "Girls," she said, "we have a nice surprise. Tonight Ellen will be coming to stay overnight and be our guest for a few days. It isn't often we have a visitor." Kirsty clapped her hands in delight. "But, Mama," Anne-Marie said in dismay, "it's their New Year. They were going to have a celebration at home. Ellen told me that her mother managed to get a chicken someplace, and she was going to roast it. It was the first time they'd had roast chicken in a year or more." "Their plans have changed," Mama said briskly. "Mr. and Mrs. Rosen have been called away to visit some relatives, so Ellen will stay with us. Now let's get busy and put clean sheets on your bed. Kirsty, you may sleep with Mama and Papa tonight, and we'll let the big girls giggle together by themselves." Kirsty pouted, and it was clear that she was about to argue. "Mama will tell you a special story tonight, one just for you." "About a king?" Kirsty asked dubiously. "About a king, if you wish," Mama replied. "All right, then. But there must be a queen, too, Kirsty said. Though Mrs. Rosen had sent her chicken to the Johansons, and Mama made a lovely dinner large enough for second helpings all around, it was not an evening of laughter and talk. Ellen was silent at dinner. She looked frightened. Mama and Papa tried to speak of cheerful things, but it was clear they were worried, and it made Anne-Marie worry too. Only Kirsty seemed to be unaware of the quiet tension in the room. Swinging her feet in their newly blackened and shiny shoes, she chattered and giggled during dinner. "Early bedtime tonight, little one," Mama announced after the dishes were washed. "We need extra time for that long story I promised about the king and queen." She disappeared with Kirsty into the bedroom. "What's happening?" Anne-Marie asked when she and Ellen were alone with Papa in the living room. "Something's wrong. What is it?" Papa's face was troubled. "I wish that I could protect you children from this knowledge. Ellen, you already know. Now we must tell Anne-Marie." He turned to her and stroked her hair with his gentle hand. "This morning at the synagogue, the rabbi told his congregation that the Nazis had taken the synagogue lists of all the Jews, where they live, what their names are. Of course, the Rosens were on that list along with a great many others." "Why? Why did they want the names?" "They plan to arrest all the Danish Jews. They plan to take them away, and we've been told they may come tonight." Excuse me. "I don't understand. Take them where?" Anne-Marie asked. Her father shook his head. "We don't really know where, and we don't really know why. They're calling it relocation. We don't even really know what that means. We only know that it is wrong, and it is dangerous, and we must help." Anne-Marie was stunned. She looked at Ellen and saw that her best friend was crying silently at the table. "But where are Ellen's parents? We must help them too." "We couldn't take all three of them. If the Germans came to search our apartment, it would be clear that the Rosens were here. One person we can hide, not three. So Peter has helped Ellen's parents to go somewhere else. We don't know where, and Ellen doesn't know either, but they are safe." Ellen sobbed aloud and put her face in her hands. Papa put his arm around her. "They are safe, Ellen, I promise you that. You will see them again quite soon. Can you try hard to believe my promise?" Ellen hesitated, nodded, and wiped her eyes with her hand. "But Papa," Anne-Marie said, looking around the small apartment with its few pieces of furniture. The fat stuffed sofa, the table and chairs, the small bookcase against the wall. "You said we would hide her. How could we do that? Where could she hide?" Papa smiled. "That part is easy. It will be as your mama said. You two will sleep together in your bed, and you can giggle and talk and tell secrets to each other. And if anyone comes—" Ellen interrupted him. "Who might come? Would it be soldiers? Like the ones on the corners?" Anne-Marie remembered how terrified Ellen had looked the day when the soldier had questioned them on the corner. "I really don't think anyone will, but it never hurts to be prepared. If anyone should come, even soldiers, you two will just be sisters. You're together so much, it'll be easy for you to pretend that you are sisters." He rose and walked to the window. He pulled the lace curtain aside and looked down into the street. Outside, it was beginning to grow dark. Soon they would have to draw the black curtains that all Danes had on their windows. The entire city had to be completely darkened at night. In a nearby tree, a bird was singing, but otherwise it was quiet. It was the last night of September. "Go now. Get into your nightgowns. It's going to be a long night." Anne-Marie and Ellen got to their feet. Papa suddenly crossed the room and put his arms around them both. He kissed the top of each head. Anne-Marie's blonde one, which reached to his shoulder, and Ellen's dark hair, the thick curls braided as always into pigtails. "Don't be frightened," he said to them softly. "Once I had 3 daughters. Tonight I'm proud to have 3 daughters again." "Do you really think anyone will come?" Ellen asked nervously, turning to Anne-Marie in the bedroom. "Your father doesn't think so." "Of course not. They're always threatening stuff. They just like to scare people." Anne-Marie took her nightgown from a hook in the closet. "Anyway, if they did, it would give me a chance to practice acting. I'd just pretend to be Lisa. I wish I were taller, though." Ellen stood on tiptoe, trying to make herself tall. She laughed at herself, and her voice seemed more relaxed. "You were great as the Dark Queen in the school play last year," Anne-Marie told her. "You should be an actress when you grow up." "My father wants me to be a teacher. He wants everyone to be a teacher like him. But maybe I could convince him that I should go to acting school." Ellen stood on tiptoe again and made an imperious gesture with her arm. I am the Dark Queen. I have come to command the night. Maybe you should try saying I'm Lisa Johansson. If you told the Nazis you were the Dark Queen, they'd haul you off to a mental institution. Ellen dropped her actress pose and sat down with her legs curled under her on the bed. They won't really come here, do you think? She asked again. Anne-Marie shook her head. Not in a million years. She picked up her hairbrush. The girls found themselves whispering as they got ready for bed. There was no need, really, to whisper. They were, after all, supposed to be normal sisters, and Papa had said they could giggle and talk. The bedroom door was closed. But the night did seem somehow different from a normal night. And so they whispered. How did your sister die, Anne-Marie? Ellen asked suddenly. I remember when it happened, and I remember the funeral. It was the only time I've ever been in a Lutheran church. But I never knew just what happened. I don't know exactly, Anne-Marie confessed. She and Peter were out somewhere together, and then there was a telephone call that there had been an accident. Mama and Papa rushed to the hospital. Remember, your mother came and stayed with me and Kirsty. Kirsty was already asleep, and she slept right through everything. She was so little then. But I stayed up, and I was with your mother in the living room when my parents came home in the middle of the night, and they told me Lisa had died. I remember it was raining, Ellen said sadly. It was still raining the next morning when Mama told me. Mama was crying, and the rain made it seem as if the whole world was crying. Anne-Marie finished brushing her long hair and handed the hairbrush to her best friend. Ellen undid her braids, lifted her dark hair away from the thin gold chain she wore around her neck, the chain that held the Star of David, and began to brush her thick curls. I think it was partly because of the rain. They said she was hit by a car. I suppose the streets were slippery and it was getting dark, and maybe the driver just couldn't see. Anne-Marie went on, remembering. Papa looked so angry. He made one hand into a fist and kept pounding it into the other hand. I still remember the noise of it, just slam, slam, slam. Together they got into the wide bed and pulled up the covers. Anne-Marie blew out the candle and drew the dark curtains aside so that the open window near the bed let in some air. See that blue trunk in the corner? She said, pointing through the darkness. Lots of Lisa's things are in there, even her wedding dress. Mama and Papa have never looked at those things, not since the day they packed them away. Ellen sighed. She would have looked so beautiful in her wedding dress. She had such a pretty smile. I used to pretend she was my sister, too. She would have liked that, Anne-Marie told her. She loved you, Ellen. That's the worst thing in the world, Ellen whispered, to be dead so young. I wouldn't want the Germans to take my family away, to make us live someplace else, but still it wouldn't be as bad as that. Anne-Marie leaned over and hugged her. They won't take you away. Not your parents either. Papa promised that they were safe, and he always keeps his promises. And you're quite safe here with us. For a while they continued to murmur in the dark, but the murmurs were interrupted by yawns. Then Ellen's voice stopped altogether. She turned over, and in a minute her breathing was quiet and slow. Anne-Marie stared at the window where the sky was outlined and a tree branch moved slightly in the breeze. Everything seemed very familiar, very comforting. Danger seemed like nothing more than an odd imagining, like a ghost story that children make up to frighten one another, things that couldn't possibly happen. Anne-Marie felt completely safe here in her own home, with her parents in the next room and her best friend asleep close beside her. She yawned contentedly and closed her eyes as she fell asleep. It was hours later, but still dark, when she was awakened abruptly by the pounding on the apartment door. And that is where we're going to stop. I know we're leaving off at a bit of a cliffhanger, but join us back for part 4 of Number the Stars.